everybody? This is Troy Solomon Levy, and you're listening to the Bars and Bars podcast, where we leverage hip hop to develop financial literacy. I'm in the studio with Boog and DJ Audit.
Yes. What's up? It's really good, guys. We here.
Yo, fellas, I got a phone call a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
From a relative. I'm just gonna say I don't want their business out there, but they told me that they wanted to include me in their will.
Okay.
Right. And I was floored, actually. I was happy, of course, as I think any person would probably be, and just floored that they thought enough of me to include me in it. That was like the furthest thing from my mind. And I feel like super privileged, very, very grateful to be a part of that. She is, I said sex, but anyways, she's not poor. She's had a good career, good paying career. And so I anticipate, not that obviously I want her to live as long as possible. But in the event of her demise, God forbid, that be very soon. I want that to be very far off. But she has included me in her estate planning.
Wow. Not as an executive administrator, but a recipient of something.
As a recipient, I am not administrating.
You're a I get a lot of those. Can you be an administrator to make sure this money goes away nicely? So I'm transferring, but you're talking about actual.
I don't mind administrating. That's fine with me.
Me either. I just want to be clear because that the celebration changes a little bit when you go from
administrator to the beneficiary.
Right.
Exactly.
And guys, this is actually something that's kind of close to our heart. Like, Boog, you're not an administrator, but you are one of the. You know where my stuff is. I've told you where it is and whatnot.
Vice versa.
Right, vice versa. Audit, you slid your stuff past us. You know what you would like us to help to make sure that in the event of your demise, God forbid, that things go smoothly. And that's something that we're willing to do for each other, man.
Yeah.
I think it's super important. I don't think we talk enough in our communities about our eventual demise.
Fact.
You know what I mean? And everything that comes along with that. Yeah. So last episode, we talked about life insurance. I don't think that's talked about enough. But here, not just the insurance aspect, but the planning aspect. Like, all right, who gets what? What's going where? In the event of not just my demise, but possibly being incapacitated, and I can't make decisions for myself.
Correct.
What is my family going to do? Just planning for those kinds of things. I don't think we talk enough about that, man.
Not in our communities. I agree.
No. Yeah. And I think that there's some, correct me if I'm wrong, and I very well could be wrong, but I feel like there's almost like a hocus pocus around it. Like, if we talk about it, then it's going to happen. You know what I mean? What do you think? Am I like off base with that?
Whether you talk about it or not going to talk about it, it's going to happen.
It's going to happen. Yep.
Right.
I think so. We can get past that.
Right.
The question is, are you prepared?
Right. And I think that's where the default should be.
Correct.
Let's talk about it. Let's be prepared for it.
Correct.
Yeah.
So
my time on this earth is limited.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yo, we could debate religion. You could debate faith, all that stuff, but you cannot debate dying.
Very true.
That's a big fact. That's a big fact. And I want to just kind of call out your family member who called you, because she was preparing, right? Like, she's like,
correct. There was a lot of
making sure that you know, hey, look, your name is on some of my documents. I'm kind of preparing and making sure that I'm good to go. And I thought about you, you know, and you resonated with her. So, big shout out to her for doing
huge
that.
Shout out. All right. So let's tie this into hip hop. 444, you told me, I remember when 444 dropped, this was years, what year was that?
Yeah, this is 2017,
2017.
The year I got married.
Yeah, you called me. He was like, yo, did you listen to 444? I was like, nah.
Mad dismissive. I mean, not really.
I did dismiss it. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And he was like, yo, this thing is filled. It's not. Yeah. It's not, in hindsight. He was like, yo, this is filled with so much financial literacy. I was like, And now it's like, I mean, obviously I listened to it before now, but there's so much financial literacy. Matter of fact, our first episode of Bars and Bars, we did Story of OJ.
Yes.
From this album. So
we could spend 10 weeks, more than 10 weeks on just album alone if we wanted to.
Probably, yeah. So we're going to Brooklyn. Jay-Z, Aldi's going to spin that track for us as Blue Ivy asked her dad a super important question at the beginning of the track.
Daddy, what's a will?
Yeah. 6 hours later.
Wow. Okay. So just to verbalize it for our listeners, take those monies and spread cross families. My sisters, Hattie and Lou, the nephews, cousins, and TT. Eric, the rest to be for whatever she wants to do. She might start an institute. She might put poor kids through school. That's what we just listened to in studio. But I kind of want to expand this a little bit. Later on in that first verse, he goes on to say that generational wealth, that's the key. My parents ain't have nothing, stuff. So that shift started with me. My mom took her money. She bought me bonds. That was the sweetest thing of all time. I could resonate with this, man. And I think for most of us, our parents, wherever they are in life now, I'm not here to, debate that or call that out. But I think for most of our parents, they didn't really start with much at all. You know what I mean? And Jay is just saying here, like, yo, moms ain't have nothing. So the shift started with me, in which I believe for all three of us, there's been a shift going on, even though we did learn certain things from our parents and whatnot, whatever those lessons were. But there's a serious shift that we are starting with our families and with our communities. And he said, but even still, moms took the little money that she had and bought me bonds. Like that was the sweetest thing she could have ever done for me, of all time, he said. Let's just start this off and just let's just talk about legacy, period. What kind of legacy are you looking to leave for your kids, or for your family? So whether or not you have kids, Boog and I already have kids, or that you don't yet.
Yeah.
But what kind of legacy are you looking to leave behind for your family?
Well, I mean, obviously financial legacy, so money, but also mindset, right? Organizing your life so that way things are smooth sailing, even after something happens where I'm no longer here. Everything is set up, it's organized. There's no back and forth. They have the direction. They know what I want. I think that alone is a legacy. And then obviously the money that I'm leaving them to do what they need for their lives. I think that's very important for me.
Yeah, man. I think legacy is really defined by the way you live, and not like the last moments of your life either.
Right.
Like you are constantly building your legacy every single day.
Yeah.
And it's what people are going to say when you leave this earth. Matter of fact, I'm reading the book of Ecclesiastes, and it talks about, and I'm paraphrasing, but he says it's more important when you die than when you're born, right? In terms of what people are going to be saying about you and who you are and what you do, and keeping things in perspective. And I say that to say like for me, legacy is the things that I'm leaving with my children, what I'm pouring into my children, what I'm pouring into my community. It's actually purpose realized. Like this is what I'm living for. So that when I leave this earth, people are going to say, yo, Boog, he was about lifting this community, making sure that they had had a better financial position than they were before I came to this earth. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's how I look at least legacy for me.
Yeah, no, I'm with both of those. For me, I want to be able to leave not just, of course, tangible assets. That's going to be super important, but then also the mind frame surrounding it. So like now I'm looking at my family, and my grandparents. One set of my grandparents, they have a will. Their parents, I think, had a will, or at least one of them. So, just perpetuating those positive aspects of financial literacy and estate planning, I think is super, super, super important. Like my kids are in people's wills, man. Like that's, to me, that's amazing, especially for our culture where a lot of these things aren't talked about. And if they are talked about, a lot of times it's just talk. A lot of people don't necessarily have the assets to be able to leave behind. I just feel incredibly privileged to be able to be part of that story, of that culture.
Right.
And I just wish that more of our families were involved in that.
Right. What's surprising, I remember, and if I'm wrong, correct me, but they were saying that Prince did not have a will.
That's correct. He didn't.
So
He
here
didn't.
you got a celebrity who's amassed a great career,
Yeah.
assets.
Did he have
over
kids?
his life? I can't remember.
Yeah, I can't remember either.
He was loving around. I mean, this brother was.
We could assume, right?
We can
But
assume.
no, I mean, he dies, and and now I think the family is still
They
in
still
course
fight. Yeah.
about his stuff, and this is the guy who had
Everything.
the ability to
At least the financial
hire-
resources.
exactly.
Yeah. I think there's a macro picture, right? A macro way to look at it, right? And these are all the theoretical stuff we're talking about. We want people to remember us that it's this icon legend or this, financial guru or whatever the case is. But then there's like the day-to-day, the tactical stuff, like the estate planning, like actually being intentional about these little things. Because here's what happens. If you don't decide, Troy,
Yeah.
where your resources go,
Yeah.
the government, there's
The
a
government
judge
will.
who's going to tell you what
Right.
to do,
That's right.
Right.
who has no understanding of the intricate details of your family.
Your family.
So case in point, if I had a son who was a drug addict or a son who was, just poor with money, and I knew that this money that I have behind, if it all goes to him, is actually going to harm him more,
Yeah.
the government's going to just say, okay, well, who's the son? Give him everything.
Yeah.
No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like
Right.
they don't know the intricate details that you leave behind.
Next of kin.
Next of kin. Oh, and if you have no son, then we're going to go to your brothers.
Mhm.
Right? Or assuming you're not married, you're unmarried, right? Automatically goes to your brothers. What happens if your brothers are like jerks and they didn't never? So all the little, and I've seen so many horror stories of situations. I'll give you another example. There was a guy who was married,
Mhm.
and his wife disrespected him. It was so bad. They legally separated, and she literally was so bad to him. He fell in love with a new girl, and he wanted to leave everything with his girlfriend and together. Unfortunately, the brother died before he was able to get a will done. You know what got everything? His wife,
The
who was
jerk wife.
legally married to him, and left the girl and treated the girl like crap. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's simple things. When you let someone else come into family matters, those things are problematic. And I think this is why it's important to do estate planning in general, which is just saying and maybe we need to probably just double click on that, Troy. Maybe tell our viewers what is an estate plan, or why is that important?
Right. Yeah. So your estate is, just to put it simply, everything that you have of value, and even negative value. So even negative. So and here is kind of want to veer off just slightly, but bring it back around. That when you have debt, even your home, if you have a debt on your home, even though your home has some sort of value, whatever debt is on there, whatever mortgage is on there, is going to give it some whatever negative value, and however that equity will play out, it'll play out. But when you pass away, in the event of your demise, the government or whoever else is going to come in, get their money, and whatever is left, that's what's going to be left. And so this is part of the reason why we emphasize, no debt, no debt, no debt.
Correct.
Even with reverse mortgages, people that are 65 plus are now taking that equity and basically giving it back to the bank. And I urge people, stop doing reverse mortgages, especially if you want to leave assets in your estate to your beneficiaries, people that you love, because now the liability of your estate is increasing and the asset is now decreasing. So your estate is basically your assets and liabilities, whatever is left, whether that's positive or negative. That's what your estate is in the event of your demise.
Yeah.
So estate planning is when you do experience your demise, God forbid, that you are now, obviously you can't plan when that day will come, but you can plan for the day, right? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Right.
So, and you plan when you're well, when you're fully capacitated and whatnot. You have all of your, mental faculties going, and we'll talk a little bit more about healthcare directives and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But we're suggesting for everyone, if you don't have a will or an estate plan, you need to do that ASAP.
Immediately.
You don't have to be sick.
No.
You don't have to be old.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Not
You
at all.
need to do something. If there's something that you're going to leave behind,
Yeah.
get it together.
And you can plan for your funeral If you want your funeral a certain way, if you want it at a particular place, if you want particular speaker or someone to speak for the eulogy, do that.
Yeah.
If you want your kids, so for my kids, they each get 33 in the event of the demise of both myself and my wife. If we pass away at the same time, we've set it up so that they get 33%, one third for each kid, each of my 3 kids, 33% of our estate, and they get it at certain ages. And we, with the ages, we would assume comes a certain level of maturity. So you could set it up that way. It doesn't have to be an event of your demise. And so we have the executors of our estate to make sure that happens in a reasonable way.
That's a really good way to set it up, because you don't want like a 13-year-old getting into that much cash.
I think for us, and I haven't looked at it in a little while, but I think for each of the kids, they get something at 18 and then 21 and then I want to say like 24 or something like that.
So they don't sit down and do nothing.
Correct.
Exactly.
Correct.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly. And this is so important. I would actually really, as an action item to the listeners, if you don't have somewhat of an estate plan binder, a folder where your documents are, some soft copies of things that are much needed to help, guide whoever it is with your stuff, like put it together.
Please.
Make sure like your house documents are in a binder or something. Yeah. And then, if you have soft copies of anything, send it to the folks that will be responsible with it, that you've given guidance to about that, so that they have it and they're not like looking for things after something happens, right? So definitely organize your life.
So let's talk about that, because you mentioned something that I think is important. Our listeners need to understand. You said that when you do have a plan and you get your plan, make sure you communicate to others so they know where at least things are.
Oh yeah,
right. So Troy, I know you kind of given me a hint on where you hide your legacy drawer or your legacy stuff, so that if something happens to you suddenly, I would know where to go to be able to kind of help track it.
Correct.
How much should we be communicating what our estate plan is? How much of it, and to whom should we be communicating it to?
So I would communicate if you're leaving something behind for someone. And I think for us, the only reason why we haven't like explained to our kids what the deal is, they're probably just too young to understand. It'll go through one ear and right out the other. They wouldn't. But for the executors of our estate, we have described that for them. Boog knows, because I trust him, and obviously I trust Audit also. We just haven't gone through that just yet. But I trust him to be able to find that in my house if need be.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So, but if my kids were of age, I would, and when they do become of age, I'm going to sit them down and say, hey, this is what the deal is.
That's good.
And things can potentially change. Just because they're my kids doesn't mean that I owe them anything. I don't owe, and I tell my kids this all the time, I don't owe you squat.
Yep.
I owe you nothing.
Yep.
Right?
No, I agree 100%.
Yeah. So if I leave you $1, or if I leave you $100,000,
you're not entitled.
You're not entitled to anything.
Yep.
I worked hard for this. You didn't work hard for anything.
Correct.
Right.
So, but nonetheless, they get 1/3 as of right now.
Any thoughts, DJ, in terms of communicating?
Oh yeah, I'm going to communicate exactly what he just said. I don't owe you anything, and if you really want to keep, whatever, like I don't have kids yet, but if it's 1/3, if it's at half of whatever, I'm gonna let them know. If you are doing crazy things in life,
that's right.
You're not responsible. I'm taking you off. You will not be on that paper, whatever it is, my will, whatever. You will not be on there. I'm fine with giving my stuff to community service.
Yeah.
I am very serious.
Yeah.
I've seen some crazy things, and people who don't deserve to essentially inherit money because it just makes it worse.
Yeah. Makes them worse.
And I know that communicating your estate or your will is, I'm sure it's a tough conversation, right? Should people be scared off by that conversation? Or should they just kind of buck it up and talk? What do you think?
Look, I think it's important to communicate because that's how you prevent issues when you're gone.
Yeah.
I think a lot of times there's no clarity, and you have now siblings, instead of grieving, they're fighting.
Yeah.
And remember, when you're gone, they're an emotional high. They maybe
That's
not
right.
thinking straight. And now you just cause animosity between siblings, sometimes seen between spouse and children, right? All that stuff. So you have to make your vision very, 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 very clear on what you want your resources to do. I think a lot of people just don't do that. Can it be difficult? Yeah, but if your actions reflect, like, it should not be a surprise. Like, it shouldn't be that difficult because you're living your truth, right?
Absolutely.
Like, and so when I think of one of the best handoffs, I think in the Bible, between David and Solomon. I don't know if you recall Troy or DJ. A lot of people were fighting for David's, not just his wealth, but they wanted to be king. And right before David was gone, he communicated to Solomon and gave him a whole blueprint. He said, yo, listen, I had a vision to build a church. I'm not going to make it. God didn't have that for me, but I'm going to give it to you. Here's all the resources you need. Here's the silver. Here's the gold. Here's the item that you need. And not only did he pour like in terms of or articulate resources, he also poured into Solomon, right? Who is, his Bathsheba's son. He poured into him how to think about it. And what was the result of that? Solomon ended up not only taking the resources and finishing the church, he took his knowledge. So when he went now to God, he said, Lord, give me the wisdom that I need, like my dad, so that I can lead. And what happened? You see David, who donated billions of dollars to the church. Now you have Solomon, who when I talk about I don't use the word pimped out, but his church was made of like gold and like legit. And Solomon was a trillionaire by modern day stuff. So that was one of the best handoffs. And it's important that we give a proper handoff to our kids. And a handoff is not just here's a letter on here's where your assets going. Hands off is you teaching your kids why not to get in debt.
Yeah.
Handoff is you telling your kids why it makes sense to invest in real estate or why it makes sense to invest in stock. So that when you're at the final bed, it's almost like we know what we got to do, Dad. We got you.
Yeah.
And that's how generational wealth is built.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. Even your legacy would be thought of as the teaching moment.
Yes. Yes.
Teaching moment. I remember sitting down with my father, right? Like I imagine, my kids, when if I were to die and my kids are speaking at my funeral, like, yeah, he spoke to us about this day. Yeah. And now here we are.
Yep. Right.
I know what to do.
Called it out.
Yep.
I think that we should kind of put some rubber to the road in terms of the nitty gritty of it, like practical things.
Yeah.
Where can people go to get to write out a will or estate plan and whatnot? What would you recommend?
I mean, I think it depends on the type of assets you're leaving behind, right? So there's two ways to look at it. So the what you pour into your kids, that's something you would teach forever, right? You keep going and going and going. But in terms of like actual will, tactically, if your net worth is less than $1 million, right, you don't need some sophisticated will. A lot of people are going to charge you a lot of money for that. Yeah. If you can just get, and there's probably different sources. You can just talk to a lawyer. I need just a basic will to get X, Y, and Z. Pay a couple $100 and get it down. When you start getting multiple assets and you start getting like a lot more, I probably start encouraging you like maybe getting a estate planner. Yeah. Because you want to protect yourself from, taxes potentially, whether it's the death tax and all the other things. Government's always trying to make ways to kind of get their stuff. So that's how I do it. Just get.
Would you recommend, like, for the average person, LegalZoom? Just jumping on LegalZoom, getting
legit. Just get it. Just get it done. I mean, it's not. Don't overcomplicate it.
Another one that Ramsey actually promotes is MamaBear.com. I think is that they do wills. You can get on there just for the will, but if you're trying to do that whole package, LegalZoom. If you know some attorneys, ask them if they know someone who's an estate attorney, right? Like, I spoke to someone. There's a partner at my firm. His wife does estate planning, and she gave me, her rundown, the amount that she charges, and this could be thousands of dollars, right? A couple $1,000s, a few $1,000s, depending on what you have or what you want. But it's still worth the investment because it's a plan, and there's no headache when emergencies happen.
Right.
So
Yeah.
with that.
Yeah, for us, I think we went too hard a little bit too early. I think we should have just gone on LegalZoom and gotten something free or close to free.
Correct.
But we actually did like the whole estate planning. We went with an estate planner, which did cost a couple $1,000, something like that. And I guess the great thing about it is that we have access to an attorney for the rest of our lives, so that when we do get more assets, that will be good. But for the average person, and I'm saying even for me, we should have just been real simple with it and gone the free or closer to free route. So for everyone that doesn't have high assets, or you dealing with one house, maybe two houses or whatever, man, just do it simply. Jump on LegalZoom, or I think Audit said Mama Bear or something like that. It doesn't have to cost a lot of money. Just do it for your sake, for your family's sake, for your family's peace.
Correct.
In my line of work, I experience this all the time, where people are scrambling because there's no plan in the event of someone's demise.
Yeah.
And no one should have to scramble. If you love your family, I'm going there. If you love your family, you would not want them to scramble in the event of your demise, God forbid. I'm talking about passwords. I've had to sit there trying to figure out passwords for bank accounts, for what, man, just put it all out there.
Yeah.
What accounts do you have? What's going on? It doesn't mean that you have to give people the password while you're living. But in the event of your demise, everyone should know where to look for your stuff and, how to access everything. There shouldn't be a need for people to be, doing jumping jacks and flips to figure all that out. And so, then, go ahead.
Another thing that I think we should maybe talk about a little bit is just evaluating the people in your life.
Yeah.
Right? Like I remember when I was like, who should I have in my will? Who should be the administrators, right? Like I have my cousins, and if my cousins aren't able, you guys are in line. But, you think about the serious folks in your life that would take something that serious, right? Like whether it's the beneficiaries, whether it's the administrators, it's like you really see who's who.
Mm-hmm.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
If you're really thinking about your life and putting your things together, you think about who's who.
Yeah.
And you do not mess with that decision.
Correct.
I mean, there's other things you'd be like, all right, even if they mess up, it's okay. Not with this. This is your life savings. This is your life's work.
Yeah. Yeah.
You take life, you look at it a little differently. You look at the people in your life a little differently. You think about it like, wow.
Yeah.
The list just got smaller.
I would probably also encourage people to play out scenarios. And let me give you an example, right? Unfortunately, I see a lot of tragic where, a couple will get in a car accident and both mom and dad's gone. Right. Remember, it's not a lot of times where usually you go without your wife or you go solo.
That's true.
So you got to be prepared. If you die and you leave kids behind, who are your kids going to be with?
Yes.
Have that conversation with them. Right.
Do you want them to go to public school, private school,
and all that stuff? You need to be able to talk to the executive administrator. This is what needs to. Now, for me, I have a blended family. So now that adds an additional level of complexity. Is everything clear if my wife was to go?
Right.
Or like, is everything clear if I was to go? Like I think sometimes we don't think enough. And I love it. And this is something I'm trying to even get better at, is like, just think about how you plan your own funeral service, right? Like how would you want it to be when you're gone? Yeah. Like I've gone to the point where I want to outline how I want the service flow.
That's right.
How I want to preach. I was talking to one pastor and he was telling me he was dealing with a family who was literally fighting because of the program layout.
Oh my God.
Like I'm talking about literally bittering.
But dude, in my line of work, I deal with this all the time. That's not just a one-off. This happens
crazy
all the time.
And it'd be somebody old. Like they'd be like 90. I'm like, yo, you knew like the time was running out. Like, how did we get to a place where we're fighting?
Yeah.
Right.
So just get detailed with it, man. Like I think imagine how dope it would be if you had a letter for your wife and you had a letter for your kids and you had a letter just waiting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a movie I was watching where this guy, he died, but he had, if anyone wanted to get something from they had to do a certain task, and there was this one, I think it was his grandchild who he wanted to give the most to, and he had to do the most.
Yeah.
And he left this letter for him to do these exercises. He goes through the trials and tribulations, accomplishes it, and then he has like a video. Instead of a letter, it was a video. If you're watching this, that means I'm gone.
Correct.
And now you have tons of money.
And you can hold on to that.
Right.
Yeah.
And I know you have the character because you wouldn't have gotten this video without you accomplishing
Those things.
That's
dope. That's how intentional we should be. Because now it's no longer about me scrambling and fighting. It's something I can hold on to, man. And I can almost say goodbye with, and it's always gonna be hard.
Yeah.
But at least it makes the fall a little bit more smoother. Because I've seen so many families fighting and arguing and scrambling with no money, right? Nothing behind but debt. And they didn't realize, like, oh my gosh, there's $50,000 left, but oh, mommy, you had $100,000 in debt? Okay, they're gonna take everything. What are we gonna do? You don't even own the building you're in. Like, you're paying, like, who's on the lease? How does that work? Like,
yeah, there's a reason for why I'm doing this, man. And just this conversation is almost making me teary because I'm so happy I did this.
yeah. It's true.
Yeah. All of that, I mean, is one of the best decisions you've probably made.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. To my future kids, if you ever listen to this.
Hey, Audie getting teary-eyed in the studio. Hey.
Think about it. And he doesn't even have a kid yet,
Right,
man.
right.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. It's one of the most important things ever.
Come on.
And it's part of our love for
That's
our
it.
families. It's love.
That's it.
Right.
Bro, Jesus did the same thing when he passed away. Like, and granted, he woke up and came to life, but he did leave a blueprint before he left.
Mm.
And it's just that same thing that we got to keep doing. So that's why I respect Hove for doing this song.
Absolutely.
Legacy.
Yeah.
And his daughter just asking that simple question, Daddy, what's the will?
Will.
My
And
goodness.
Beautiful
breaking it
question.
down. Oh, gosh.
And a beautiful
My
answer
goodness.
in art form.
Poetic, yeah.
Yeah.
It was
She's a
good.
kid. Imagine the grown-ups that don't even ask.
Yo, this has been Bars and Bars. Thank y'all so much for listening. We had a great time with this episode. We'll catch y'all next week.
Deuces.